Imagine finding a place where you can own a home for pennies on the dollar, surrounded by endless mountain views, and then realizing hardly anyone wants to stay. That's the reality of West Virginia, where the cost of living is 12% below the national average, yet whole towns are emptying out, with over 75% of the state carved up by rugged mountains, and places like Elkins buried under clouds for 210 days a year. The American dream turns suspiciously quiet. Why would a state with so much cheap promise keep losing people faster than coal jobs vanish? The answers behind why nobody lives in West Virginia are far more unsettling than you'd expect. So what's the real story behind the bargain? Number 1. Sticker shock savings. In West Virginia, the numbers on the real estate listings look more like typos than actual prices. 3-bedroom houses for under $100,000? That's not a rare find. It's practically the going rate in places like Logan or Mingo County. Even in Charleston, the state capital, the average home price hovers around $150,000, which is less than half the national average. For comparison, that's about what you'd pay for a parking spot in San Francisco. The affordability doesn't stop at the front door. Groceries, gas, utilities, everything seems to cost a little less here. The overall cost of living is about 12% below the national average, and that's before you factor in property taxes that barely register on most budgets. So, if you're used to squeezing into overpriced apartments or watching rent eat half your paycheck, the Mountain State starts to look like a financial safe haven. Now let's talk home ownership. Nearly 78% of West Virginians own their homes, the highest rate in the country. That means for every 4 houses you pass, at least 3 are owned outright or with a mortgage, not rented. In some rural counties, the rate climbs even higher. Doddridge tops 86%. It's not just retirees either. Young families, teachers, nurses, even folks working retail find themselves holding keys to their own place. But the real draw isn't just the price, it's the setting. Picture this: a backyard that rolls right into the woods, with the Appalachian Mountains as your daily backdrop. Nearly 75% of the state is carved up by rugged hills and forested plateaus. Every window seems to frame a different postcard. In the fall, the hills explode in color. In the spring, the streams run clear and cold. The air smells like pine and wood smoke. It's easy to see why the dream takes hold. You start to imagine weekends spent hiking through the Monongahela National Forest, fishing in trout streams, or just sitting on the porch while the world slows down. There's a sense that you could finally have space, quiet, and a house that doesn't demand every dollar you make. In towns like Elkins and Beckley, the streets are lined with Victorian homes and old brick storefronts. Some of them are fixer-uppers, sure, but the price tags make the idea of rolling up your sleeves feel less like a burden and more like a personal project. Even the local papers run stories about people moving in from out of state, drawn by the promise of affordable living and a slower pace. So, on paper, it all looks perfect. Cheap houses, mountain views, and the promise of a simpler life. If you're searching for a place where your money goes further and the world feels a little less crowded, West Virginia seems like the answer. Fun? Maybe even too good to be true. Number 2, the coal crash economy. For decades, coal was the backbone of West Virginia. Steady paychecks, union jobs, and enough economic gravity to keep entire towns humming. But that backbone snapped. Since 2009, the state has lost more than 56% of its mining jobs. That's not a typo. Over half the industry, gone in just over a decade. The payrolls that once kept small businesses alive and high school grads off the unemployment line, they vanished too. Take a drive through McDowell County, and you'll see what a coal bust looks like up close. In the 1950s, McDowell was home to nearly 100,000 people, its streets packed with miners, teachers, and shop owners. Today, fewer than 20,000 stick around. That's an 80% population drop. Imagine your hometown losing 4 out of every 5 people you know. Schools shuttered, main streets stripped bare, and neighborhoods where the only thing growing is the grass in the cracks. The collapse didn't just hit miners. When the mines closed, the dominoes kept falling. Hardware stores, diners, car dealerships, even hospitals. The cash that once cycled through these towns dried up. The economic ripple effect turned into a tidal wave. Payrolls in West Virginia dipped sharply after pipeline projects wrapped up or got canceled, so even the jobs that were supposed to fill the gap disappeared before they could take root. And while the rest of the country added jobs, West Virginia's employment numbers kept shrinking. The so-called brain drain isn't just a theory here, it's a visible reality. Young people with degrees, or even just ambition, pack up and leave as soon as they can. What's left is an aging population and a shrinking tax base, making it even harder for these towns to fund basic services. Coal once promised generational security. Now, it's more like a cautionary tale. The mines that built these communities have become their undoing. McDowell County's story isn't unique, just the most dramatic. All across southern West Virginia, the coal freefall turned thriving towns into job deserts. If you're looking for signs of economic hope, you'll need a magnifying glass, and maybe a time machine. Fun? Try alarming. Number 2, roads and sewers. The everyday grind that makes cheap living feel a lot less like winning the lottery. West Virginia's road network stretches more than 38,000 miles across hills, hollows, and switchbacks. That sounds like a lot, until you realize about a third of those roads are ranked in poor condition. Think potholes big enough to swallow a tire, crumbling shoulders, and hairpin turns that turn a quick grocery run into a test of nerves. And wheel alignments. The state's Department of Transportation spends millions every year just to keep up. But the mountains always seem to win. Travel speeds crawl, especially in winter, when black ice and sudden whiteouts can turn a 2-lane into a parking lot. Now, imagine your daily commute includes dodging potholes that have been patched so many times the road looks like a quilt. Mechanics in towns like Welch and Pineville do steady business fixing bent rims and busted suspensions. It's not just rural backroads either. Even in Charleston, urban streets can feel like obstacle courses. For families living miles from the nearest highway, every errand comes with the risk of a flat tire or a cracked windshield. And when the state finally does repave a stretch, it's not unusual for the new blacktop to start breaking up again before the year's out. Fun? Only if you own a tire shop. But the headaches don't stop at the curb. More than half of West Virginia's structural areas, think neighborhoods, not just isolated cabins, still don't have centralized sewer systems. In practice, that means septic tanks for most folks, and for some, pipes that empty straight into creeks when the ground freezes or the tanks back up. In McDowell and Logan counties, it's common to find homes with warning signs tacked to the fence. Boil water advisory. The EPA estimates about 40% of residents statewide rely on individual sewage systems or, in some cases, nothing more than a pipe running downhill. That's double the national average. When heavy rain hits, septic tanks overflow, and raw sewage can end up in ditches or even yards. The smell? Let's just say it's not the mountain air you were promised. The cost to fix all this isn't pocket change. Small towns with shrinking tax bases can't afford to overhaul ancient pipes or build new treatment plants. In Crown, West Virginia, it took a $1.5 million EPA grant just to stop raw sewage from running through backyards. Elsewhere, families are left patching up aging septic systems themselves, hoping the next big storm doesn't send the contents bubbling up the drain. For renters and homeowners alike, it's a constant worry, and a reminder that cheap housing sometimes comes with hidden bills. So, while the mountains deliver stunning views, they also bring a daily grind that wears down cars, budgets, and patience. For anyone dreaming of an easy rural life, the reality is a little less postcard, a little more mud on your boots, and a mechanic on speed dial. Number 2, offline Appalachia. In a world where even your refrigerator wants a Wi-Fi connection, parts of West Virginia are still living in the dial-up era, if they're lucky. About 20% of homes in counties like McDowell don't have any internet access at all. That's not just a handful of remote cabins. We're talking entire neighborhoods where the only thing streaming is rainwater down the hillsides. For comparison, the national average for no internet households is closer to 6%. Fun? Only if you enjoy sending emails by carrier pigeon. It's not for lack of trying or funding. Frontier Communications, the state's largest provider, landed nearly $250 million in federal grants to fix the broadband black holes. The result? More broken promises than actual connections. In 2017, West Virginia had to return almost $5 million to the feds after regulators caught Frontier padding invoices with loading charges and processing fees. Internal emails even called it a 35% markup. Imagine paying that much extra for internet speeds that can't even handle a video call, unless you're nostalgic for buffering wheels and frozen faces. Speaking of which, try holding a Zoom job interview in McDowell County. Odds are, you'll freeze mid-sentence, eyes half closed, and the only thing moving will be your panic. Satellite internet is pitched as the magic bullet. In reality, it's more like a rubber band and a prayer. Latency can be so bad that a simple Google search feels like sending a message in a bottle. Some families pay for expensive satellite plans, only to find the connection drops every time it rains, or when too many neighbors sign on at once. Meanwhile, the state's grand plan to bring fiber optic broadband to over 110,000 locations got yanked at the last minute in 2025. The governor decided to broaden technology options, which is political speak for good luck with those cell towers. The digital divide isn't just about Netflix or online shopping. In places like McDowell, kids do homework in parking lots to catch a Wi-Fi signal from a fast food joint. Telehealth? Forget it. When the closest hospital is an hour away and your internet can't handle a video chat, a routine checkup becomes a logistical nightmare. Small businesses struggle to process credit cards or manage inventory. Even government services are moving online, leaving the most isolated residents with no way to access basic benefits or job applications. Reddit threads are filled with stories about missed job opportunities, botched remote school days, and the sheer frustration of being left behind in the 21st century. For many, the digital lockout is just another layer of isolation on top of the mountains and bad roads. It's not just inconvenient. It's a barrier to health, education, and economic survival. In a state already fighting to keep its young people and attract new families, being stuck in the broadband dark ages is a deal breaker. So, while the rest of America debates 5G versus fiber, parts of West Virginia are still waiting for a decent signal. Any signal. Welcome to offline Appalachia, where the future is on hold and your video call just froze. Again. Number 3, the body count nobody brags about. West Virginia's overdose death rate isn't just the worst in America. It's in a league of its own. In 2020, 81.4 out of every 100,000 West Virginians died from drug overdoses. For perspective, the national average that year was about 28. And it's not just a few tragic cases. In counties like McDowell and Logan, the rates shoot even higher, 167 to 186 per 100,000. That's more than 5 times the national average, and it's not an outlier, it's the trend. Fentanyl is the main culprit, now showing up in about 75% of fatal overdoses. Back in 2013, fentanyl accounted for just 7% of overdose deaths. By 2020, it was responsible for 3 out of every 4. The pills that started the crisis have been replaced by something far deadlier, and the numbers reflect it. Even as the rest of the country saw overdose deaths start to level off, West Virginia's kept climbing, up 152% in just 7 years. But drugs aren't the only thing people are struggling to get. In McDowell County, nearly half the residents rely on SNAP just to eat. That's not hyperbole. Almost 1 in 2 people need government food assistance. Logan County isn't far behind, with SNAP rates double the national average and a poverty rate pushing 30%. In these places, the idea of a safety net isn't a metaphor. It's the only thing between a family and going hungry. Hospitals have closed, clinics are stretched thin, and the only thing rising faster than the overdose numbers is the wait time for help. The state's health crisis isn't just a headline, it's the reality for thousands. When half your neighbors are on food stamps and the funeral home is busier than the maternity ward, it's hard to talk about hope without feeling like you're tempting fate. Fun? Try surviving. Number 3, gray days and low grades. If you're looking for sunshine, West Virginia is not the place to unpack your sunglasses. Towns like Elkins and Beckley clock in at more than 210 cloudy days a year. That's nearly 2/3 of the calendar spent under a blanket of gray. For comparison, Seattle, the punchline of every rainy day joke, gets about 201 cloudy days. In West Virginia, the sun is more rumor than reality. Now, let's talk about what that gloom does to your mood. Seasonal depression isn't just a punchline here, it's a way of life. People joke that vitamin D supplements should be handed out with your driver's license. And when the clouds finally break, it's not uncommon to see folks standing outside like they're witnessing a miracle. But the weather isn't the only thing that drags people down. The state's public schools consistently rank near the bottom nationwide. On average, West Virginia students score more than 10 points lower than the national average in both reading and math. That's not a small gap. That's the difference between passing and repeating a grade. In the latest national assessments, only about 1 in 4 West Virginia 8th graders was considered proficient in math. Reading scores don't fare much better. It's not just a rural issue either. Even in larger towns, schools struggle with outdated textbooks, staff shortages, and buildings that should have been condemned when disco was still in style. College isn't always the ticket out either. Degrees here often come with a side of disappointment, since many local jobs don't require them, and moving away is the real graduation requirement. So, while the real estate might be cheap and the mountains pretty, daily life can feel like a never-ending November. Cloudy skies, struggling schools, and a state report card that reads like a cry for help. Fun? Only if you're a fan of gray. In West Virginia, over 210 cloudy days a year, shadow towns, where more than half of homes still lack basic sewer systems. The state's population has dropped from nearly 2 million in 1950 to under 1.8 million today, while McDowell County fell from 100,000 residents to fewer than 20,000. The collapse of coal left economic scars. Coal jobs have fallen by more than 56% since 2009, and new industries have struggled to take root. Broadband gaps, underfunded schools, and some of the nation's worst health outcomes remain entrenched, despite decades of federal aid and reform efforts. Yet, the exact impact of ongoing policy changes and future climate risks is still unknown. What is certain, documented in federal reports and census data, is a cycle. Affordability draws attention, but persistent structural problems push people away. For many, West Virginia's promise is real, but so are its challenges, written into the landscape and the data.